Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Start recording. Thank you so much for joining. We'll just give everyone 1 minute just to allow them 1 minute to get out of their last minute meeting and into this one. Let me get rid of my note taker. We've got a few people on, which is nice for mid-December. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll get started because we've got quite a lot to cover, and obviously people can join when they want to, so I just want to give a quick intro. So hi everyone and welcome. I'm Emily Hatton. I'm founder of AI and Agencies, where we help agencies build AI capability in a really practical, non-overwhelming way. Most agencies right now are still in what I call the scratching around with ChatGPT phase, trying tools, having a play, but not really seeing consistent time savings or operational change yet. And honestly, it's not because you're doing anything wrong, it's because the conversation online is a very tools first and not a very agency ops aware approach. So before we dive into the panel, I just want to give a simple frame that will help everything we talk about today make sense. At AI and Agencies, we use something called the AI OS, which is basically the operating system for making AI work within an agency. It isn't a tool and it's not a software, it's a structure that turns AI from fun to play with into part of how we run the business. It's built around 5 things. Audit, so look at what's repetitive, what's bottlenecked, and where do you actually lose hours. Onboarding, give your team the skills and confidence to use AI safely and sensibly. Integrate, redesign workflows so AI is actually in the process, not floating around the edges. Lead, help managers set expectations, rituals, and norms so adoption sticks. Measure, so look at tracked hours saved, margin gained, and real commercial impact. So basically, it's understand, train, redesign, lead, and measure. It's not amazingly glamorous, but it's very effective. That's basically ops in a nutshell. And just to explain a bit more, for smaller agencies or for teams who want quick, meaningful wins, we run something called an AI sprint. So a sprint is where we take 3 processes inside an agency, usually things like reporting, onboarding, QA, or research, and we completely rebuild those workflows using a process-first approach, and then layer in AI in a way that actually sticks. And this all happens in a week with some follow-up. I'm mentioning this not because today is about this framework, but because it gives us all a common language for talking about what good AI adoption actually looks like in an agency setting. So with that in mind, I brought this group together because they each tackle a different part of that ecosystem. So my world is process-first capability building side. Tabitha focuses on diagnosing bottlenecks and building small targeted agents that deliver ROI fast. Peter and Callum look at the human side, behavior, leadership, team psychology, and readiness. So across the next hour, we're going to hear from all 3 angles. So Peter, can I just hand over to you to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, happy to. Welcome everyone. My name is Peter Benay. I think my edge is like I've been on both sides of the billing spectrum, shall we say. So I've spent my first 10 years in agencies, mainly in London and Budapest. I was like head of something mostly for big network agencies. And in 2014, I switched solely to work remotely and work for scale-ups and startup companies as a CMO to hire. And in the last 5 years, I only worked as a consultant. In the recent days, I launched my newsletter, AI Ready CMO, and this is basically my sole purpose and workflow right now. We help marketing directors, senior marketers, agency operators with knowledge and also a paid program to work better with AI, simply as that.
Thank you very much. And Tabitha, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. So my background is in agency and in-house agencies, and my expertise is in creative operations. And what I found was that creative operations is all about admin. through an agency, you've got admin overload and people manually doing things. And the advent of AI meant that a lot of that admin overload could be alleviated. So very similar to Emily, I do a lot of auditing and diagnosing. But what I tend to do that's slightly different to Emily is build the agent that releases that admin overload. And whilst I certainly can and do teach people how to use them, I tend to implement something that solves the problem more than teach people how to build something that solves the problem.
Thank you very much. And Callum?
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you all for joining. I'm a recent psychology graduate, and I had a recent fascination with the machine mind. So I've switched from learning about how people think and behave and combine that with learning about how AI systems operate and sort of combine the strengths of either side to develop a holistic approach between machine and AI mind. And I currently work at Agents of Change alongside Gareth Healy, who is my dad, and he's had 30 years in the marketing agency realm. And now I'm offering a contemporary viewpoint of the new technology, and we hope to combine our forces and implement AI successfully and help marketing agencies.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move into the discussion. So let's start with a reality check. If you spend too long on LinkedIn, you might think every agency is running 200 agent workflows and doubling delivery capacity. But when you walk inside most agencies, the truth is usually more basic. So for Callum, you're building a diagnostic around people, platform, process, and product. When you run it with agencies, what does the real state of AI adoption look like?
So I would say that what I'm seeing is quite simple. There's a trend that AI is everywhere and that everyone understands its power and wants to implement it, but it's almost embedded nowhere. So there's huge experimentation, but almost no integration operationally. So I built this diagnostic to develop clarity. I believe there's 4 main pillars that AI is involved in, and I believe that if the bottleneck is one of these pillars, if one of these pillars is below the rest, then that's about where the AI capability sort of rises to. So I have the 4 Ps, which I call there's people, which are the people that use AI. How well do they use it? How open are they to using it? I have platform, which is the specific platforms and tools that are used in the agency. There's process, and how do you use these tools and embed it in workflows? And then product. Do you have any differentiated products using AI, or even KPIs that separate usage of AI versus without using AI? So to capture the sort of real value of AI implementation. So I've ran plenty of diagnostic meetings so far, so I can briefly go over what I've found in each pillar. People, it's almost a normal distribution curve. You have some people who are naturally veered towards tech and are sort of very proficient at using it. And then you've got some people who almost scared of using it and are avoiding the technology because they feel that it might undermine their own work or even end up taking their job in the future. And then in between, there's a large spectrum. So this mismatch makes it quite difficult for agencies to develop standardized systems that are able to appeal to everyone's competence level. So if there's people that are lagging behind, the workflow cannot operate efficiently. So that's a challenge that we've been trying to change and improve people's knowledge of how AI works and how they can better prompt and use it in workflows. Then there's platform, which is usually the strongest, but this isn't exactly a good thing because it can create chaos. Everyone jumps on the newest, hottest tool, and I have developed a jet fuel analogy, which I call it. So we have the jet fuel being AI, And then the engine of this vehicle is the operations in the business, the systems, and the driver is the people. So I believe that the engine needs to be capable enough. So the operations, it's built on a good foundation, a good system, and the driver needs to be able to navigate these high speeds that the jet fuel would put into it. I believe AI fundamentally, from what I've learned, is something that makes processes more efficient, but these processes need to have a good basis, or else it's speeding up something that is fundamentally flawed. So then product is my last pillar, and it seems that AI is used in most agencies and people are experimenting, but it's never truly commercialized. I'd say that they use it behind the scenes, but never turn it into differentiated offers. And without KPIs, it's quite rare that agencies compare usage with and without AI. So they miss the real value of its implementation. I'd say from a psychology perspective, agencies over-allocate attention to tools and almost none to the underlying systems. And performance only shifts when the behaviors and workflows underneath are redesigned.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And just in terms of the state of AI adoption, I actually did a survey in August this year about looking at how well agencies are utilizing AI in 2025. So if anyone wants to know more about that, then please just drop me a message, because I can share the survey with you in case you actually want to know some kind of stats on how it's being used and where you compare. Okay, so over to you, Peter. So you help marketing leaders use AI to win back time. Where are you seeing AI genuinely reduce workload, and where is the promise still overstated?
So I'm a big fan of simplification, especially with complex systems like AI. And during this conversation, you will be hearing a lot of numbers from me, I guess, because as I mentioned, we have this newsletter and community behind me with around 5,000 people, all leaders. And we have two things there which are, I think, are interesting. Not selling it just because, you know, the numbers are interesting there. One is that we have a survey. We gather their insights all the time, how they are using AI, what they are doing with AI, and how they are improving with AI. These are, again, marketing leaders. And the second is an AI readiness audit, which is a test, a simple 25 questions test, specifically designed for marketing teams and marketing leaders. So with that said, I have a lot of data to back up what I'm trying to say here. One thing in terms of simplification, we see a lot of, and you will be looking at me, I mean, you will see me looking at the screen a lot because of the numbers, sorry about that. So according to our numbers, around 70% of the teams, marketing teams, use at least 3 to 10 AI tools. I think that's like correlate, and I think if you are a marketing agency founder or operational guy, you probably understand why this is, and you probably have the same situation when you're operating your agency. And but there is one thing: 85% of them increased their AI tool count in the past 6 months. So this is increasing, but there is a huge paradox with the numbers. Most of the leaders report that around so 65% of them increase their output with the new tools they signed up, but most of the output that they have, 60 to 40%, needs some rework, meaning that they still need to do some rework. So what I'm trying to say here is that they are not saving time, they are reallocating the time in most of the cases with the tools that they sign up. This is due to many, many reasons. According to the readiness assessment that we do, it's mainly because of the missing knowledge. Callum said a lot about prompting and learning how the platforms are working. That's 100% true. Most marketers don't, I mean, that's like a really hardcore thing to say, but they don't really know how to work with the AI tools themselves. They don't know how to prompt better. They try to, first draft everything with one-shot prompts. They don't use, proper long prompting and stuff. And that requires, on the long run, more rework, more things to do, more, more time wasted. Instead, with AI, you would be able to save that time if you would prompt better. Just one example. And it all comes back to the knowledge. The other thing is the operational depth, which we call it. So they waste a lot of time on operational things that doesn't really matter now with AI, because you can one-shot most of the stuff. One thing that you can immediately do, and that's a huge improvement, research and analysis. That's like basic thing. That's why AI is invented in the first place, I guess. So if you do any kind of market research, backing up your campaigns, backing up your strategy, backing up your whatever messaging that you have, immediately you get those research insights that you would get, I don't know, 5 years ago from Gartner or whatever. Now you get it immediately from a prompt. So I think that can be really helpful too. And yeah, with the right prompting, you can do first drafts, but there is this paradox that I'm trying to say here, is that usually it requires the right prompting, which most marketers don't know how to do that. And that's a big problem. So if I would be a training company, by the way, I would immediately launch a business around prompting and leadership.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. And over to you, Tabitha. So when you walk into a new agency, what does AI use actually look like on the ground? And where, if anywhere, is it already driving profit or reducing admin?
Well, I think I would agree with what Callum and Peter are saying at the moment. When I get there, there's usually disparate use of many different tools, with no one ever having a real valuable knowledge on what those tools are capable of or what they should be used for. Because each tool is different, has different skill sets. You've got your LLMs, but you've also got things like Jasper and all those other things. So, and usually what's happened is that the leadership may have said, well, here's a whole load of Enterprise Claude licenses, or here's a whole load of N8N licenses. Off you go do something. And there's no real training behind what they should use those things for. So what I often find is that people have access to things, and like Peter says, they try and do one-shot prompting, and it's bad prompting, and the output isn't good enough. And then typically they throw their hands up in despair and say, well, this AI stuff is rubbish, can't do what I need it to do, not doing it anymore. And then they stop using it and go back to old ways. But where agencies are actually finding value is when you look at a process from end to end, and you accept that there is the 10-80-10 rule, or as I prefer to call it, the AI sandwich, where you have human input, human knowledge, human context, human expertise that creates the prompt and provides the documentation and the things that the AI needs to use as examples. And then you have AI doing all the messy stuff in the middle. And then at the end, you have human curation, where the expert gets to look at what the AI has done and say, yes, that is good, or no, it needs adjusting in this area, that area, or the next, and doing some work. But it's gotten you to 80% of where you need to get to. So you're, instead of spending a week doing something, you're spending a day doing something, right? So you're saving time in those areas. I think what a lot of agencies have always suffered with, and I've seen this in my 20+ year career of creative operations, is they always think tools are going to solve the problems. And it's never tools that solve problems. It's fixing process, fixing workflow, fixing change management, fixing user engagement, fixing knowledge. That's the thing that fixes things. And then the tool lives in support of all of those things. And it's actually why I've taken the approach of, yes, absolutely, when I encounter the curiosity and the engagement and the willingness to learn, I train. But typically I provide a tool that gets them to 80% of where they need to get to, and then train them what the 10% on either end need, so that they can start seeing ROI really quickly. But I agree completely with everything Peter and Callum have said. It's just a tool. It's just a new tool. And people are grabbing onto every possible one that's out there. They've got that magpie syndrome of, give me all the shiny new stuff, and never actually learning what each one is capable of. And then someone like me comes along and goes, okay, here's something that uses all of these things. All you've got to do is provide this bit at the beginning and this bit at the end. And that's when I start seeing ROI.
Peter, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to add some very simple thing to Tabitha's words because those were golden. Is that one simple thing is that AI runs on data, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that. Operational workflows are data. So if you are documenting your stuff, then it means that you have some sort of documented workflows, I guess. Mm-hmm. And when you add AI to the picture, it usually just multiplies the chaos that you already have.
Yeah.
So obviously the answer is that you don't need AI. You just need to fix your workflows first. All the documentation, all the stuff that you have, the data. And once you add AI onto that, then you have something to get out from it. But most people just throw the resources on the fire, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. And what a lot of you guys have said is that agencies aren't short of tools. Most people have got signed up to more tools than they're using, and they're sharing tools with their teams that the teams have got no knowledge how to use. But what they're short of is like clarity of how to use the tools and the processes to back up how to use the tools, which takes us nicely into our next theme. So which is basically why layering AI on broken ops makes everything worse, like Peter just mentioned. So this is the number one mistake that I see, trying to layer AI on top of a workflow that isn't working in the first place. It doesn't fix broken operations, it just accelerates the chaos. Obviously, all of us are in agreement of this, but because we see it so consistently, it's definitely worth discussing in more detail, because this session is really centered around operations, because it's the main mistake that we see agencies making. So Tabitha, when you audit workflows, what are the red flags that tell you you don't need another tool yet, you just need to redesign the workflow?
Mm-hmm. If I go in and ask 3 different people, how do you work? And I get 3 different answers, that's a red flag. If I go in and I say, what's your tool stack? And I hear about 20 different tool stack items, massive red flag. If they're saying I can't get the reports I want because the data is inconsistent, that usually means that chaos has fed into the tools that they're currently using. I think people naturally gravitate towards working, they will fill a vacuum. So if they arrive somewhere and that somewhere doesn't have anything particularly documented or particularly spec'd out in terms of an operational workflow, or how we do work, or anything like that, they'll fill that vacuum, because their role, no matter what it is that they're doing specifically, their role is to provide value to the company that's employing them. So they fill the vacuum with their own knowledge, which usually means you end up with divergent process flows, because they start doing things in the way they're accustomed to doing them or the way they like to do them. But as soon as that happens, trying to layer a tool, any tool, a workflow tool, an AI tool, any tool over chaos, you just get a reflection of that chaos. So you end up in a bit of a hall of mirrors where every reflection is a bit more warped and a bit more bizarre. And you need to go in and say, okay, and I don't like to work on the whole process. I like to go, okay, let's pick one small thing. Let's fix this one small thing. And then let's evaluate whether or not the fix that we've put in place, whether it be human, AI, or any other SaaS provided tool, like a workflow tool, evaluate whether or not that actually made a difference to you. And if it did make a difference, then let's pick another process and work on that one. And you work on them one by one until you end up in a place that's better. But as soon as someone says to me, oh, we use Excel and ClickUp and Monday and this one, that one, the next one, Slack, Teams, Trello, you go, okay, whoa, hang on. Let's dial it back. Let's figure out what you actually need. And then let's talk about how do we layer AI on top of that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think those are very good things, and hopefully agencies on here will ask themselves those questions and see what the outcomes are. So Peter, what's the operational cost when teams rush into AI tools without first fixing strategy, workflow, and decision making?
It's being slow. So I think the one of the main things with AI and the main goal with AI and all the ROI around AI is being efficient and more speedy. And what usually happens, according to almost all our numbers, and I mean, if you speak to anyone, is that decisions are not going faster, but they, instead of getting multiplied, so people are having like decision fatigue and decision like they're not be able to decide between too many options. And I think that's a problem. So actually AI makes everything a little bit less speedy in terms of operation. But the main question behind that is interesting. And I think, and I'm guessing here, I think it's because most of the workload that was around, spread out within the team around 5 years ago or so, now it's more concentrated on senior management. And why I'm saying this is that according to all our numbers, like around 40%. Sorry, I'm looking around the data again. 40% of our leaders around us, around thousands of people, got their junior roles within their agencies and within their marketing teams. So most of the juniors are either don't get a job, not get hired at all, or got fired, which is weird because most of the work around AI now, if you prompt it well, if you build the agent well, if you build your custom bots well, and if you have the great operation, fully detailed data is all there, everything, it can be run by a junior in most cases. Obviously, some of the inputs like taste, creativity, we will talk about that later, and the experience of the leader cannot be done with a junior. But most of the AI operative work and the production workflows can be done by the junior. So because they are like less now within the team, most of the workload is with the senior management.
Okay,
and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I think that agencies aren't making conscious decisions on how to restructure their workforce based on these changes. And I think that's interesting what you say in practice, because actually it's not a good decision to remove juniors. Obviously, it's good to think about how to change who's doing what pieces of work and rethink it completely so that you can have a more profitable agency likely, but by getting the right people to do the right thing. But I think it's, for a lot of agencies, it's so different, or I think what it will look like in 2 years, the work distribution will be so different from how it is now, that people need to do a bit of time into planning it, which people aren't doing at the moment. People are just doing things they've always been doing and just cutting out certain layers.
Yeah, there is a workforce and the moral question of where is the career ladder. But that's like a separate discussion, I guess. And there is another question around what the seniors are doing and why they are overwhelmed, or are they? That's also a question, I think, because I don't know, like next year, I'm sure that like 2 or 3 senior marketers can launch a full-fledged, full-service agency with all the production workflows, with the right bot setup and agent setup behind them. They don't need the juniors, I'm sure. And one thing quickly I want to reflect to Tabitha's words about ROI. According to our data, again, so again, just us, only 20% of the teams are measuring any kind of ROI. I'm not saying that they don't, only 20% are having an ROI. I'm saying that 20% are measuring at all. And measurement, I mean, to me, it's always you need to measure the time that you saved with AI, because that's actually the winner on the long game. But
Yeah,
it's astonishing that only 20% are actually saving something.
absolutely. And if I can add to that, how on earth, with any tool in the world, it doesn't matter, is it AI, is it normal, whatever, any tool in the world, if you implement something and you don't decide to measure whether or not it made your life better, what is the point?
Yes.
And it could be time saved, or another measurement is kind of output increase or something like that. So there's a couple of other ways of but then you also need to look at the questions like quality, and if the output increases, is the quality the same? So like the main one I think with adopting AI tools is time saved, but they're also in some cases it can be actually because you save time, like you could charge more or you could charge differently, so actually you could make more money from the product as well. So there's other measurements as well.
A recent metric I've implemented with an agency is how much did your revenue increase by? Because by saving the time that the AI agent has given you, you are effectively freeing up billable capacity. And if you free up billable capacity, but then you waste it, well, then the AI still hasn't done anything for you. But if you free up billable capacity and you use that time to win more work, how much has your revenue increased by? So you can even ladder it all the way up to revenue.
Yeah. And sorry again, just a really short and simple, quick example on how to measure this time save. There is no such thing as overall time saved, I think, because you will waste something in the long run anyway. And sorry for being so brutally honest here, but I mean,
that's good. That's what people need to. Everyone needs to hear.
So, well, I don't care. So, so we did something, for example, in the workshop, and how you do measure this is really simple. You have, for example, content repurposing. That's like one of the things that most agencies are doing. I don't know, have a master creative. You have 15 different ad creatives for the 15 different ad platforms, and your graphic designers and copywriters are reworking that master ad creative to different platforms, right? It took hours before AI now. Today, with the right prompting, 2 minutes. Well, 10, let's say, if you do it the second draft as well, whatever. But it will be definitely under an hour. On the long run, you will save X number of hours compared to the hours that you spent before AI. But again, as relating to Tabitha's words, that requires the fact that you are measuring your time before AI as well on the workflows. That requires that that your workflows are in order, your data is in order before you actually add AI into that. Once you add it, you can measure what you actually saved on the long run, but only by workflows.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so Callum, psychologically, why are teams so drawn to let's try a tool even when the underlying processes clearly aren't ready?
So this behavior is quite predictable. I feel tools almost like a gold mine. It's like the end of the rainbow, and it's ultimately immediate gratification. And changing underlying processes demands cognitive effort, and a lot of the time it's slow, political, mentally heavy, which we call it cognitive load in psychology. It's where your memory and attention resources are at the maximum. And when all of these different overwhelming thoughts are coming in and the work is really tough and mentally taxing, the brain looks for immediate relief. And tools provide that loop. Even talking to ChatGPT, for example, as an LLM, you type, you get a result, and that feels productive. You haven't really had to put much grueling work in to get that output. And this is also why phones are so addicting. You know, you see the colors and the notifications when you're trying to focus. The work is difficult, and a lot of things can sway your attention. So LLMs and AI in general is definitely, you're definitely prone to using these tools to alleviate that cognitive load. I would also say it has something to do with identity. People can adopt the tools privately in agencies, and it feels like leveling up without asking for permission. Some people can actually hide their AI usage because they feel that if someone knew that their work was AI generated, it might bring down their credibility. And so they want to look impressive. But I do believe that AI is ultimately a tool. Like Peter and Tabitha have said, it's ultimately something that increases efficiency on what is already present in an agency. I almost compare it to a calculator. It's still the person using the AI, but tools make it look easy and it can mask the skill gap. I would also say that process redesign forces group behavior change. At an individual level, it can be simpler because it's only one person having to change their mind. But when you bring in 10, 20 people all at once, they require all of those people to agree on the same process. And like I've said before with the people pillar, a lot of people have different capabilities and attitudes towards AI. So this can be very difficult. Until leaders shift team attention from shortcuts with these new tools to redeveloping these processes, the tools will always win. Novelty dominates attention unless you deliberately sort of take a step back and focus on the underlying systems that are important.
Thank you. And I think that a lot of agency leaders that I work with, obviously, you know, they are kind of craving that instant gratification. And like you said, particularly in marketing agencies, this is a very like dominant behavior. You know, it's a fast moving world and people want to keep up. So I think that it just puts more pressure on that behavior, particularly from founders of agencies. They are prone to that, and that's often where operations people come in and try and battle that with like putting processes in place, but then it's who wins out in agencies. So it's good to discuss that you have to address the processes first and the operations side first. That's still the core of everything, and then you can look at the tools to address it. Okay, so let's move on to creativity, because obviously this is a big part of agencies and using AI. So it's often the first place that agencies experiment, but speed isn't the same as quality and output isn't the same as commercial impact. So Peter, where does AI genuinely elevate creative output, and where does it flatten everything into average work?
Yeah, so I worked for a short period of time to AKQA, the agency that runs the Nike campaigns, I think, or ran, probably not now, I don't know, but it was many years ago. And I was speaking with the creative director there, and I was young, and I was saying that, oh, you run so many great creative campaigns here, and yada yada. And he said that, oh man, we are just chopping the purple wood, and that's it. And I think that's a great example of what creative work looks like in real life, without the hush and puffs and whatever. For AI, I think you need to use it for ideation and testing. That's like the most important part of AI, I think. If you want to see 100 iterations or variations of your master creative, whatever it is, an ad copy or whatever, AI can produce it immediately for you. You don't need to spend hours of time to do that. You also you can use it for technical repurposing. So it can actually now repurpose to different platforms. It wasn't the case a year ago, by the way. So that's kind of like a new thing. And you can also adapt to multiple platforms. And that's kind of where it ends. I think. And again, numbers, sorry. So we asked the creativity problem to our community, and 35% of them said, and this is where the picture gets bleak, that AI is creating sameness across the competitors. And only 5% said that their work is more distinctive because of AI. So I think, and that's like the most important message I would want to get through from this webinar, is that if you run an agency or any kind of creative work, the taste or the creativity that you have, however you define it, I don't care. I would love to define it as taste, so taste in different characteristics in creative workflows or ideas. Those ideas will worth a lot because AI won't be able to replicate or create those genuine, creative, tasteful stuff that you run for your clients. But the rest, it will be taken care of by AI, I think. And that also means that you shouldn't be using AI to create original creative content from the get-go, because it will create sameness and non-distinctive stuff, synthetic content, shall we say. Yeah, and I think you Emily, mentioned that one of the ROI measurement points that we can measure is the amount of output that we create. I don't think that we should do that because it will lead to I don't know, this massive output problem that we have. We don't need more content. We need good content that resonates with the brands and the audiences. More tasteful, more creative content. And I think ultimately we need to measure the time that we spend on creating these amazing, meaningful content for our clients.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think this is like one of the big fears that agencies have, and if they don't have, they should have it, in terms of like, this is where you really need to think through your use of AI, and also have structure put in place with telling your team where they should be using it and not. Like, this hasn't been thought out or explained well by many organizations that I've seen, and it's really important to have, if you're working across a larger team, people should be utilizing AI in similar ways. So as Peter said, like, the ideas is what makes your agency unique or your outputs unique. But what you should do is teach the team how to use AI to speed up the parts that don't require, like, the ideation and the input from the actual team members and the strategy. They need to know how to use AI to speed up the other parts that they don't need to use that part for.
And one other thing, sorry to add, that remember when we hired people, young people as juniors, that because they understand the tech culture and that tech tool and that tech stack, which we don't understand because we are older and senior and whatever. I suggest that now hire the juniors because they have so unique point of view. They understand something that you don't understand culture now because you're older and senior or whatever. So that's also one thing for juniors.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a really good point. So to Callum, so how does the LLMs, our prediction machines idea, limit the more memorable left field creative thinking that often wins?
Yeah, so this leads nicely on from Peter's point, that ultimately all creative work seems to blend. From studying how AI works, it's a very complex train of mathematics, calculus, but ultimately they are prediction machines. When you see an LLM type out a response, it's taking the whole prompt that it's developing and also the whole data set that it's been trained on, and it's ultimately just predicting the next word in the sequence. So it is based on probability. And when the statistically likely answer is the one that has the bias, all of the creative work that it outputs tends to have the same energy around it. You know, it's tracked data sets maybe of previous creative campaigns that have succeeded, and then it may take that and use it as a sort of example for a new creative piece. But people have already seen that, and novelty is what captures attention and memory with creative work. So there is a parameter called temperature, and when you increase this, it's usually between 0 and 1. So you can prompt many common LLMs to sort of increase the randomness of their generation, and this can help. But ultimately, I feel that creative work that sticks with people has an element of human emotion. And although machines can read every psychological paper about how emotions work, they can't actually feel them. And it's quite a nuanced combination of complexity with all of these emotions. And I'll use a famous campaign of Cadbury. I'm not sure if anyone remembers the 2007 advert where it's a gorilla playing the drums to Phil Collins. And that was a great success. But when you actually think about that, it has nothing to do with Cadbury, apart from the fact that there was a purple wall behind this drum kit. And in no way would AI produce an output like that. And it may be random, but we can actually feel the emotion of this gorilla, who's obviously a fake sort of animal for this campaign, but we can almost feel the passion when he's banging these drums, and the build up, and Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight, very popular song that almost has a crescendo of music. And for whatever reason, those random stimulus that are combined together, it just worked and people loved it. The classic LLM response might be Cadbury, so it's chocolate bar, you know, dairy milk. It might put a massive loads of pints of milk behind someone with kids playing and enjoying the chocolate. But no, for whatever reason, a gorilla playing drums is what worked for this company. And so it's ultimately understanding emotions, and that as people we can feel the same combination of these emotions, and it makes creative work very powerful. So ultimately, I'd say that LLMs accelerate competent work. Like Peter said, you can create a spreadsheet of ideas that are sort of congruent with your past work, but it's the taste and the experience and the ability to feel emotion that create these memorable leaps in creative work. And so prediction engines, they don't produce breakthroughs, they almost highlight where the breakthroughs might live. You've still got to apply your human mind to achieve these creative works.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And hopefully with some people who feel more nervous about things, give some reassurance that obviously there's some things that AI cannot do and will never be able to do. So hopefully that provides some reassurance there. So to Tabitha, where do you see creative use cases genuinely impacting commercial value, and where are they shiny distractions that are hard to monetize?
Okay, so I actually, despite having been in advertising for far too many years to actually mention without dating myself, I believe creativity lives in every role. I don't define creativity purely as the creative in an agency who outputs ideas and award-winning ones and all the rest. So when you look at creativity as something that lives everywhere, and you recognize that creativity is informed by the world around it and measured by the world around it, you come back to my 10-80-10 rule, but it's slightly flipped. You can use AI to help inform creativity. You can use it in terms of research and what has existed before, what is a prediction of what might work in the future, etc., etc. But you cannot replace creativity with AI, because only a human is capable of feeling the emotion of that gorilla against a purple wall. And I know the creators who produced that, and you're right, no one could have done that other than them, because that inherent understanding of emotion is what drove the success of that advert. And AI absolutely cannot do that. It can measure it out the other end, just like Peter said, right? It can pull in all the data, it can use all the engagement scores, it can do all of that stuff, and it can provide you with validation that it worked, but it can't do that pure, imaginative, emotional piece. Where I think it wastes time is people disappear down a rabbit hole, or they become too reliant on it, and they start using new shiny tools. They're using Midjourney this week or Replit the next week, or whatever the case may be, and they're using all these tools all over the place to try and help inform their creativity, but they're not switching on their own curation of what's coming out and turning it into something great, because only humans can do that bit. But if you want to talk about in terms of ROI, where do I see the greatest ROI? Honestly, it's the most easily measurable in the operations space. It's actually not measurable within the creative space. The output of creativity is measurable in the creative space. The analysis of did it work is measurable. But in terms of did it save time? Yes, no. It might have gotten you to 40 different ideas, which can inform the creative in you, who can then use all of those to come up with great ideas. Did it save time? Who knows? You might have only spent 10 minutes thinking about it yourself, but you added complexity into the situation and overwhelmed yourself and got, analysis paralysis and went down a rabbit hole you shouldn't have gone down. Or it might have given you clarity to choose a route. You can't actually tell. But operationally, you can say, did it save time? Did it make more money? Did it give me billable hours back? So for me, I tend to concentrate on the operational side of things, because my task is to deliver ROI for businesses. And so operationally, I can functionally do that. In the creative space, I feel that is too inherently human to start trying to work out whether or not it saved time. Of course, just before I close off, there is the ability to do things you've never been able to do before due to some or another constraint, whether that's budget, time, or capability. So there are creative campaigns out there that have benefited from the use of AI in being able to produce an asset that previously would have been impossible to produce because the budget didn't allow for it, or the time didn't allow for it, or whatever the case may be. But it's the human who thought of the use case of the asset they wanted. They creatively came up with that idea and then used the tool to produce the idea. So it's still, the creativity still lives in the human. It can't possibly live in a machine. It can pretend in a machine. It can look like creativity in a machine, but that's where the human expertise comes in and says, is it or isn't it? And inevitably, you can poke holes in it because it isn't.
Thank you very much. So we're just going to move into our last theme, which is just talking about the future of teams and skills. So how we think roles, skills, and structures will change. So back onto you, Tabitha. So what skills do operations and creative teams need to develop so they can own AI-powered systems instead of just becoming button pressers?
It's honestly quite simple. Curiosity. What might I be able to do? One of the limiting factors more often than not is a lack of curiosity. We've always done it like this. It's always been like this. It'll never change. And when you have that mindset, then you can't see beyond the boundaries of where you are or the barriers of what you're in to be able to imagine how it might be different. And implementing AI isn't just about diagnosing a problem. It's about being able to imagine how might it be different. And if I can go back to my previous answer, that's actually where the creativity in operations lives, because it's a novel way of solving a problem, and the human has to do that. So I think, honestly, the most important skill, curiosity and the willingness to learn and the willingness to change. There you go, 3 things.
Thank you very much. And Peter, as someone who literally wrote the book on async leadership, how should leaders redesign roles, rituals, and expectations so AI strengthens capability instead of creating dependency?
Yeah, that book, by the way, was written 3 years ago when AI wasn't a thing. So treat it carefully. But yeah, it was a culmination of me working in the leadership roles for 10 years in fully remote settings. Yeah, actually, I have a simple and consistent answer here. Surprising. Document everything. That's like the most important thing. That was the main message of the book as well 3 years ago, and it's leveling up right now because documenting with AI now it's so much easier. Yeah, just if you are like a leadership in a leadership position in any kind of organization, just document how you decide on things, how you work with others, how you think that everyone should work together. It can be so much easier right now. You just record your workflows on a screen, transcribe, let AI transcribe it and put it in a document, and that's it. Everyone will understand it, and everyone can replicate it, everyone can follow it. It can create a little bit more transparency within the workflow and within the organization, which, I don't know, might help, I guess, for most. Yeah, even juniors can take those documentations and use it to work better with AI. I'm really big in junior workflows and creating some sort of like a career ladder for them, because I feel that within some 1 or 2 years from now and from today, they will all become creators or something, rather than working in agencies in actual employments and stuff. And I don't think that would be great. So
No.
have
Yeah.
them learn your way through AI and with AI, and let them manage the AI workflows that you are creating and working together.
And that actually moves nicely into the question I have for Callum, which is how can agencies make sure juniors build foundational skills first and use AI as a support, not a crutch?
So I believe that AI ultimately removes the core aspects of the learning process. There's a term, neuroplasticity, which describes the brain changing, neurons firing in different patterns, and it's ultimately how we learn. The correct environment for neuroplasticity to thrive is when people wrestle with problems. They use their critical thinking, they struggle, they make mistakes, and then learn from those mistakes. That's how learning ultimately works, and how it accelerates and becomes the most efficient way. AI removes this middle ground. It gives you the answer straight away, which can be a problem because people can sort of rely less on their critical thinking. And when it comes down to actually using it without AI, it can make people less able to harness that learning process, or even have the tenacity to carry on through working out problems if AI is constantly just giving them answers. So I'd say, funnily enough, the Greek philosopher Socrates nailed it with his way of tutoring, which is Socratic tutoring. And it's a method where he used to ask questions to his students to enable them to, it guides them to the right answer. You can actually do this with AI and ask it, if you're learning any sort of topic, please use Socratic tutoring. And it will then ask you a series of questions. You can say, don't give me the answer yet, summarize at the end, sort of prompts questions until I figure it out. And that can actually make neuroplasticity, it gives it the right environment to thrive. And that enables people to have their critical thinking. I think in agency operations, I'd say that juniors should show their thinking first and then use AI as almost like a marking tool, or something that evaluates their thought process, and then they can go manual again and then input back to AI, then that can give its critique. I'd say the goal isn't to limit juniors' access to AI, it's learning the correct ways to prompt it, and it's just making sure that this learning environment is kept and people are able to make mistakes and wrestle with problems rather than always trying to get the correct answer straight away.
Thank you. And I like that Socratic thinking. I think that's something that agencies should try. So thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you so much for the panelists for sharing their thoughts. If anyone's got any questions, please do obviously contact the panelists themselves or send them on to me and I can share them. But that's been a really useful discussion. And thanks to everyone for joining and watching on the replay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. It's been great. Cheers.
Bye.
See you
Cheers.
later.